Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hey photographer, Jessica Whitaker here. Is the Canon 5D Mark IV still worth it in 2025? The answer is yes. This is the camera I use for all of my photography, and I have since 2017, but I think that this year might be the year I get a mirrorless camera, and I'm kind of exploring other brands. You guys know I've always said I am not brand loyal. I started with a Nikon when I was in high school, and then my dad found a Mark II at a pawn shop for about $150, which was a huge deal because I grew up very, very poor. But I got that Mark II and I loved it, and I used it for years up until 2017 when I switched over to a Mark IV. And the only reason I moved to a Mark IV was because I was doing more YouTube videos where I wanted to be able to use autofocus, because I would be in my room filming the videos and I'd have my brother come in to make sure it's focused on me, and then I'd film, and then after 30 minutes he'd come back in, make sure it was focused on me, and I was a little bit over that. I wanted the autofocus, and that's the reason why I switched. Real quick, I want to let you know that I have a free photography Facebook group called Build and Bloom. This is the OG photography community, true community that is kind, it's encouraging, and it's inclusive, and it's the best place to ask questions about your specific photography business. So if you're looking to upgrade to a mirrorless camera, ask away in the Facebook group and you'll get feedback from myself, but also other photographers at different stages in the game. It's my best free resource. Check it out over on Facebook groups. That's Build and Bloom. And I also have the Build and Bloom Photography podcast. One thing in the Facebook group and over on Instagram, I have been polling my community over the past few years about who's making the switch to mirrorless. Do you regret it? Are you in love with it? Did you switch from Canon to Sony when you made the mirrorless switch? And I have had so many interesting conversations, and it's given me a lot of advice as I consider upgrading to mirrorless. So many people, a surprising amount, were saying that they regret the switch from their, specifically Canon, to the Canon mirrorless system. A lot of photographers feel like their Canon DSLRs had better color than the mirrorless camera. They say it's a lot warmer and true to the skin tones, and multiple people have even described they don't like how the Canon mirrorless cameras look digital, which I think that's such an interesting thing to include. I don't know exactly what it means, but I kind of get what it means, and so if you kind of get what it means, I want to include in this video. Quite a few people regret switching over, regardless if it was Canon or another brand. Why a lot of people switch from Canon to Sony and Fujifilm. They like the fact that Sony, for example, allows you to use third-party lenses, whereas Canon mirrorless cameras, you can only use the Canon RF lenses, which are quite expensive, versus going with Sony, you could get a Sony body and a budget-friendly lens so that you can have more lenses to play around in your collection, more bang for your buck. And the people who switched over to Fuji from Canon said that they love the colors more. In fact, I had a few people who told me that they switched from Fuji to Sony, and also people who switched from Sony to Fuji. So there's a lot of brand jumping around when it comes to switching over to mirrorless. So it kind of got me thinking, maybe I want to explore another brand. I've never touched a Sony camera. I've never used a Fuji camera. I've used Nikon before. That's what I started off with. I've always just had my Mark IV because that's what works for me, and I'm not somebody who likes to spend money on camera gear. I'd rather buy designer purse instead. If it works and I love it, why change it? I use the Mark IV for portrait photography, my travels, and before I got a separate camera for YouTube videos, I'd also use it to film on. This camera has been my workhorse, and to me, it's waterproof. I live in Seattle, which it's rainy 50% of the year, and I tend to travel to other places that are also rainy and cold. I don't know what it is, but it's good to test how much this camera can take. In fact, it's even traveled with me to Antarctica and has endured freezing temperatures up in Alaska as well. It's never let me down, and I love how durable it is. I am somebody who I need a weather sealed camera, and I also want a camera I don't have to be too precious about. And I love that the EF lenses are also weather sealed. I can shoot with this in the rain and the cold, like I said, Antarctica vibes, and it's totally fine. Nowadays, and I recommend to you to purchase your gear used. I recommend KEH for used camera equipment. Let's talk about the price real quick. So it It was released in September 2016 with a price tag of $3,500 for the body only. And as of January 2025, the Mark IV is listed on Canon in new condition for $2,500, but on KEH, you can get it for $1,000. Mirrorless cameras are undeniably much faster than DSLRs. The technology has changed so much, and that technology is something that might be a necessary tool in the type of photography you do, specifically weddings or family portraits. But since I do portraits, that hasn't been a factor for me. Yes, it does make it so much easier, especially with that viewfinder, and especially how the focusing is so much more advanced whenever I have used a Canon R5 when I've done like KEH videos. Like I've shot with mirrorless cameras before, but only Canon. I do get influenced myself. Like I'm influencing myself by using the camera and I love it, but I do have to think from like a practical standpoint. Okay, am I ready to go and spend $3,000 on a new camera just because of these two features when my Mark IV works great and I'm doing portrait photography? And let's talk about the low light. Mirrorless cameras are so much better with low light situations. The Mark IV was revolutionary for its time when it first launched in 2016, but it can't compete with something with low light capabilities like the Canon R5 or the Canon R6 Mark II. But again, since I do portrait photography, that's not a factor for me. The Mark IV works incredible for me, so I have not felt the need to upgrade. I've always preached on my social media about being a conscious consumer, and that's how I approach my gear purchases. Before we get any further, I want to thank my sponsor Squarespace for making this free photography video possible. As a photographer, having a polished and professional website is everything because it is the first impression that a client gets of your work. I have been using Squarespace officially for 10 years, and I can't believe I have been on the platform for a decade. That is how much I love and trust Squarespace. One design feature that I love is their flexible website templates, and they've actually rolled out something called Blueprint AI, which is their updated version of the website builder. I actually created my own new website for my branding program, lightscamerabrand.com, using Blueprint AI, and I was absolutely blown away by the customization. You can not only just drag and drop, but you're not locked to a grid. This rivals other drag and drop website platforms, but you're still in Squarespace, so you get analytics, e-commerce, email marketing, the SEO. Other platforms just cannot compete with Squarespace. As we go into 2025, I am a broken record telling photographers to blog their galleries. This is how you are able to get organic traction and leads to your website without using social media. I have done so many resources on exactly this topic, from podcast episodes to YouTube videos. Squarespace has built-in SEO features which will make optimizing your website so simple so that you can rank in Google when somebody searches Seattle portrait photographer, New York City wedding photographer. You are more likely to show up when you do SEO, and Squarespace makes it so simple. Let me give you an example. 2 years ago, I photographed a graduation at Columbia University in New York City. I blogged the gallery, super simple, and I used Squarespace's SEO. 1 year later, I had 12 inquiries in my email inbox with people who wanted to book me for their Columbia University portraits. I don't even live in New York City. I'm on the other side of the country in Seattle. And guess what? A month ago in December, I have 2 more leads for this year. I guess I'm going to New York City to do some Columbia graduation photos thanks to Squarespace. If you're a photographer who's ready for a website that does it all and works for you, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. When you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Jessica Whitaker to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Your photography deserves to be seen and booking clients, so let's make it happen with Squarespace. Who should still use the Mark IV in 2025? If you are just getting into photography and you want a reliable full frame camera, the Mark IV is an amazing choice, and I've been recommending it year after year as I've made these videos. This is not an entry-level camera technically, but I believe that it's beginner friendly enough so that it grows with you. You don't have to use all of the bells and whistles that the Mark IV comes with. Use it in manual mode and just focus on shutter speed, aperture, ISO, white balance. And as you learn and grow in your craft and skill set, the Mark IV will grow alongside you. Next would be if you are a photographer who already has a collection of EF lenses. Maybe you're going to be upgrading from a crop sensor or a very entry-level camera, something like the Canon Rebel, then the Mark IV would be a great option for you, because if you have any EF lenses, they will work on this camera and you won't have to worry about switching over to RF lenses. The Canon 5D Mark IV and like all Canon DSLRs can take third-party lenses, so Sigma Art or Tamron, but the Canon Mirrorless system is only compatible with Canon RF lenses. However, you can use an adapter, and that is what I use on my Canon R, which I use strictly to film YouTube videos on. I do not use it for portraits because I like my Mark IV more. I've never experimented around with that camera, but it's great for video, and I use an adapter for my EF zoom lens, and you can get an adapter for about $150. The Canon 5D Mark IV is also amazing for budget-conscious professionals like myself. If you are a professional photographer and you do not need cutting-edge technology, the Mark IV offers excellent value, especially if you buy it used. I touched on this a little bit, but let's talk about why you would want to upgrade to mirrorless, whether it's a Canon system, Sony, Fujifilm, Nikon, whatever. Number one, for wedding photography, I did use the Canon R in the summer when I was second shooting a couple of weddings, and it did make a huge difference with the fast focusing and being able to look in the LED screen and see exactly what I'm shooting and adjust my settings. If you're a wedding or family photographer where kids are running around and it's all fast moving, fast paced, and you have to nail the shot, the speed and accuracy of mirrorless cameras is worth it. Especially, and I've done videos with this before, when I would use the R5, because I would be able to borrow it from KEH when I would do videos with them about the camera. And sometimes I would keep it for a couple extra days to shoot with it. When I would do golden hour sessions, ooh, especially during that juicy golden hour where the sun, it's all hazy, the sun is about to go below the horizon, I am able to nail the focus every single time with that mirrorless camera. Whereas with my Mark IV, it takes a little while to focus sometimes. It's a little more of a tricky lighting situation for the camera to handle. Number three is future-proofing your gear. Switching to mirrorless now would allow you to build out your lens collection, and EF lenses work fine with the adapter, but I have noticed, and I've done YouTube videos on this, RF lenses do offer better performance overall. Overall, my thoughts: durability of the Mark IV is incredible. Rain, snow, of course, use with your own caution. Don't blame me if the camera doesn't, if it breaks, you take it to Antarctica, but for myself, it works fine. And it has always performed flawlessly for me, and it has always recovered from those extreme weather conditions. Mirrorless cameras are catching up in this department, but DSLRs in general still have that edge for ruggedness. At its current price point, especially on the used market, which is now where I only buy my camera gear, the Mark IV is an amazing deal for what it offers, especially if you get it for $1,000 on KEH. I mean, come on now. If you need feedback deciding what type of camera you should buy, head on over to my free photography community called Build and Bloom over on Facebook groups. This is the best place to ask questions about gear, and also if you're having a difficult client situation and you want help drafting a response, or you want an extra set of eyes on a gallery before you send it out, Build and Bloom is my best free resource. It's kind, encouraging, and it's inclusive to all levels of photography and all photographers. And you can listen and learn to the Build and Bloom Photography podcast wherever you get your podcast. I believe in you and I believe in your business. Be sure to hit subscribe so you're the first to know when new free videos for your business come out, and I will see you in my next video. Click right here to watch and to learn. I'll see you there.